Thank you all for being with us today. Let's start and let's begin our event. So, to introduce from the very beginning, my name is Irina. I'm going to be moderating the event tonight. Both myself and our speaker, Tomas Horacek, we are working in the company Ciklum, whose Speaker's Corner is our own format of the events where our colleagues, whom we find really expert and professional, share their knowledge and experience. We are very proud of our colleagues and what they do and how they do this. And we are really happy and lucky to share this knowledge with the community and exchange thoughts and ideas together with you guys. So thank you for being with us tonight. Um, just to give you a very quick intro about us as the company and what is it about. So we have been present on the market, Ciklum, for more than 20 years already. We unite more than 4,000 professionals all around the globe. Our main delivery centers are located in Ukraine, Poland, Bulgaria, Spain, in India, of course, in recently acquired Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Romania, where we acquired the lovely company CN Group, who's now a part of Ciklum. Also, we're present in Spain, and our headquarter is located in UK, in London. And we work with really great clients. Some of the logos you can see right now on the screen. Among those are Just Eat, eToro, Metro Markets, Mercedes-Benz. So these are either the companies from Fortune 500 or fast-growing organizations around the world who are very innovative and growing extremely fast. And this is the place where we can actually deliver really great solutions to them, and they trust us in this. As we have these great talents and experiences, we would be happy to gain even more great professionals to our team. And if you're interested in this, please let us know. We're gonna share some information with you afterwards. Before we start the event itself, I would like to give some org moments regarding what's gonna be the flow tonight. So we're gonna have the presentation of around 1 hour and a half. Presentation itself is going to last around 1 hour, and we will have half an hour for the Q&A session at the end. If you have any questions, feel free to type them in the chat here, and we will address them at the end of the event. And if you see that your question has already been addressed by Tomas during his presentation, then that's good, and we're happy we have covered this. We do have the recording of the meeting, and it will be uploaded to our YouTube channel. And you're going to have the link to this sent to you separately. Also, we will share the slides shown by Tomas tonight. So please stay tuned for more updates from us. And on this stage, I would like to pass the word to Tomas and give him a stage with introduction of him and why is he the one sharing this information with you tonight. Enjoy the talk.
Thank you. So, hi, my name is Tomas Horacek. I'm Principal Tech Lead for Web and Mobile Technologies in Ciklum, Western Europe. I started with JavaScript around like 2005, and since then I have experience with many different languages, some backend, but most of them were focused on front-end technologies like Swift UI for mobile applications, Elm, JavaScript, TypeScript, and Flow for the web applications. And my favorite technology now is React and React Native. This is what I do most of the time. And today we will be looking at monorepos overall, and especially one of my favorite tools for managing monorepos, especially in JavaScript. I already migrated 3 quite big projects into NX Monorepo, and today we will be looking at this tool. So let's start. There will be basically 5 parts of this presentation. First, we will talk in general about Monorepo, what are some advantages, why it is like a good idea to have Monorepo on project. Then we will talk a little bit about NX, what it is and what it allows you to do in Monorepo. We will have 2 demos, which will be practical in code. There is a repository. I will share a link where you can see the initial state, final state, and the state where we ended in the presentation. So everything you can see today you will be able to run on your local machine. And as a final thing, we will look a little bit into advanced setup of continuous integration and what NX tooling really help you with. So let's start. So what is Monorepo? The best way to define Monorepo is to oppose it against like multi-repo approach. So this is common standard in many projects that if you want to have like two applications and some shared code, like shared design system, shared utility functions across the projects, you usually deploy it or keep the code in like 4 separate repositories. And if you want to reuse the code, you create an npm package, and then you install the dependency as a private npm package. So this is common case. This was the case on those 3 projects that we migrated and migrated to Monorepo. But there is a different approach where you don't put everything into a separate repository, but you just put everything into one repository. And you don't have to create npm packages. This is called Monorepo or any other packages. And this gives you a lot of advantages. So you think maybe if you put everything into one repository, you will end up with monolith. And this could be a case for some projects, definitely. But monolith is more like property of the code. If you put everything together, it is not really property of how you put things together. It is more property of the code, how you write it. So you can have like really nicely structured monolithic application, and it is better than like messy distributed microservices or things like that. So it's a different trade-off, but overall you will not end up with monolith, and you can achieve same separation of concerns as in multi-repo. And the reason why you can achieve this, and you can achieve it even faster and easier, is that Monorepo needs some Monorepo tooling. NX is example of this Monorepo tooling, and it will help you a lot with like creating proper Monorepo with proper separation of concerns. So why Monorepo? There are 2 main use cases for the Monorepo. First is like I want to share code across multiple projects. And second use case is that I have a monolithic application. It is kind of messy, and I want to separate it into really isolated domains and create like nicer modular monolith, for example. So what's the problem with the shared code? So let's imagine that you have this shared code in this multi-repo approach, and you want to fix something in the design system. And it is, for example, there is new branding for your company, and all buttons have to have like different color. It has to be like more green color. So the problem is that if you have like this multi-repo approach, it creates a lot of overhead. So you have to first create pull request into design system, which will change default color of buttons. Wait for CI to finish. Then you have to create a pull request with the upgrade, like with the release of new NPM package. It has to be approved, merged. Then CI will create NPM package. Then you have to go to application 1, where you have to upgrade to new version of design system. Wait for CI, it is finished here. Then you have to go to application 2, upgrade to new version of design system, wait for CI, and deploy the application 2. So this simple change where you change just color of button this bureaucracy of like releasing and multiple pull requests in different repositories, in our experience, it adds like 1 day, practically 1 day of just bureaucracy waiting for pull requests and pipelines. So how does it look in Monorepo? You have everything in one repository, and what you can do, you can create like one atomic PR pull request that will change the color in your design system. Because you don't have those npm packages, everything is linked. Basically, everything is versioned in the Git, and you don't have to create like release for the design system because application one is using what the application one sees on the system. So you can create one pull request. Maybe even if there are breaking changes, you can fix breaking changes in application one and application two. In this case, the pull request will be a little bit bigger, but there is much less bureaucracy and much less waiting on different like approvals and pipelines. So this is one advantage. Second advantage is that if you imagine that you have some ugly, bad monolithic application and you want to like clean it up, and maybe there is a issue that there is too much code and it is very slow. So what Monorepo allows you to do without a lot of overhead is to create like small libraries in your repository and slowly break the application into smaller parts. And maybe if the compilation of this whole code base is slow, for example, you can easily create like small demo application for specific module, for example, for shopping cart. So there could be like very small application just for shopping cart. That it can be like mostly mocked, and the developer can just run small demo application if they are working only on shopping cart. So this is another possible use case of the Monorepo. This is the end for the introduction. There are more reasons and more tools in Monorepo that are very useful. And this website, which is created by the NX teams, compares different Monorepo technologies and different advantages and necessities that you have in monorepos. So you can dig a little bit deeper on this website. It compares different monorepo technologies, so be aware it may be a little bit biased towards NX, but in my opinion, it is quite fair comparison of different monorepo tooling. So if you want to know more a little bit about monorepos, this is one of good resources. So what about NX? So NX is an open source tooling for monorepos. It is written in TypeScript mostly. Maybe there are some binary parts of it already. It contains a lot of plugins. Default plugins are mostly around JavaScript ecosystem. There are many technologies that is supported out of the box. Also out of the box are supported some like non-front-end technologies like Go, .NET, Docker, and other things. And there exists a lot of community plugins that are able to compile Rust and run tests in Rust or Java or anything else. One advantage of this plugin model is that if you create a plugin, it will create like standard commands for building, testing, and linting all the projects across technologies. So you have one command to build a specific project or specific library, and you don't have to think, okay, this is Go library, and I have to use a different command. It has generators, so it can generate like new libraries inside monorepos or new applications inside monorepo pretty easily, and we will use this today a lot. It has dependency graph, so it understands how things are imported and what needs to be like re-executed. If you change something in design system, basically you have to redeploy all the applications that use the design system, for example. It has distributed cache and IDE plugins. It has many more features, but this is kind of the basics. So, and let's start with the demo part, because this is like the most easy way how to start understanding what NX offers to you. So this is the link to the repository. I will share it later in the chat, so you can copy paste it. And let's start with our example application. So today we will be working on this application. It is a clone of Twitter, very simplified clone. It is a quacker. On Twitter you tweet, on Quacker you quack. So there are like, there is a profile page for each user. There is about page, you can sign in. The backend is using GraphQL, and it is in-memory storage. So if I restart the server, the data is lost, but this is just like very simple example application. I am logged in. I can quack 1, 2, 3. It appears on the timeline, and it also appears in profile. So that's it for the application. There is also GraphQL backend. It is Express application with GraphQL. And if I want to ask, for example, for quacks with the user name, I can ask easily. And this is for it. Yeah, so let's see it in the code. In the repository, we have 3 basic branches. We will be working on the main branch. Then we have an initial state, which is now exactly the same as a main branch. Initial state is this like monolithic application that we want to break into smaller parts. And the final branch is example of the final application that is separated into multiple small libraries. So let's look at the code. I will open VS Code. Okay. It is kind of, what is this? I can delete it. It is kind of pseudo monorepo. It is like backend and frontend in same Git repository, but there is no monorepo tooling. So you can think about this like having it in separate repositories, but for simplicity, it is in one repository. Each backend and frontend has a package.json with different dependencies, and frontend is quite nicely modularized. You can see that there are modules for Quack related things like homepage and user detail page. There are pages about authentication, which is, where is it? Here, sign-ins and sign-up. Then there are content pages like about page. And for navigation, this is some common things like top navigation bar, placeholder, and things like that. We have a pretty nice design system, which is like avatar, link, button, and things like that. It is using tachyons for the CSS. It is kind of like very simple tailwind CSS setup. And I just did not want to overcomplicate things, so it is very simple create React app application. For the backend, it is very simple Express.js application using Apollo Express server. So not very interesting thing, but for our purposes today, it will be enough. Yeah, On the branch initial state, which we are currently on, is you have to run it this way. You have to install packages for front-end and backend. And in the final demo, let's see how it looks in the NX graph. NX graph allows, this is NX graph running on the final branch. And if I look on the dependency tree, you can see that there is Quacker backend application, there is Quacker frontend, and you can see those different domains, how the application is already separated into different libraries. So there is a Quack UI, Quack feature, a navigation utility, and things like that. The graph is now quite messy, and the reason for that is that a lot of, basically every module in the application is depending on the navigation UI and navigation utility. So I can turn off those two libraries from the graph, and now you can see that it is much cleaner understanding of the project, how it will look in the final state. And if I remove the authentication context, which is handling like who is logged in, the username and things like that, it is now even much clearer, and there is, except of authentication context, there is no overlap between those two authentication and Quack domains. So, okay. So let's migrate those two applications into NX applications. So this will be kind of our starting point. So we can first migrate those applications into NX tooling and then break the application into smaller parts. Yeah. So first we will generate empty NX workspace, add few NX plugins that are necessary, generate empty applications for backend and frontend, and then we will move existing code from those /frontend/backend applications into newly generated applications. So let's start. Yeah, to generate a new NX workspace, you have to use this command. I have logged it on specific version for today's presentation. You usually use the latest, but maybe you will see it in the future, this presentation. So it is logged for exact version, so it will work exactly as you see now. So I have to go just to the root of the folder and run this command. I will be using Yarn Package Manager. NX works with any NX NPM manager, but Yarn is like my preferred now. It's prepared here in the slides, but it would work with any other. So this is interactive creation of the workspace, and we first have to decide what will be kind of prefix or organization prefix of our workspace. So let's use Quacker. Then it is asking us to pre-create like application for Node, Angular, or React, but we will start from blank slate. So let's start with none. It is asking us now if we want to use like integrated version of NX or package-based NX. I will not dig deeper into the differences between those two, but basically package-based allows you to have like different dependencies in every package or every library and application in your code base, but it has some disadvantages in like performance. We will use today integrated because it is like much better. This is what we use on those applications that we migrated into NX tooling. It is a little bit harder to start to migrate existing projects into integrated. So maybe in your use case, you can start with the package-based version of NX, but integrated is like much more feature-rich version. So we will use it. And final question is about CI caching, and we will not use it now. We can talk about it a little bit later. So it is installing yarn. Okay, install those packages. And what this command will do, it will create a new folder here with package.json, some dependencies, some basic configuration for editor config, git ignore, nx, readme, and like this. There are some basically empty folders like apps. This will be the folder where we will generate like new applications. Libs is for libraries, and tools are for like custom NX plugins or ESLint plugins. So what we do now, we already have a VS Code prepared. This contains like recommended extensions, and this one is the NX plugin that you can see here. We will use it later in the demo. So I will delete this one, this folder, but the rest of it, I will just move to the root. Okay, and replace all those files. I can delete now. Okay. So if I run yarn again in the root folder of the project, we have a package.json. It only installed nx command, basically CLI, nx CLI, and nx workspace, which is kind of like basic plugin with workspace specific tasks. So we ready? Let's see what it changed. Okay. I can add everything. Yes. Let's commit. Demo 1, step 1. So now, yes, now we have an NX tooling, very rough NX tooling in our project. Next step is to add plugins for Express.js and for React. So let's add them. Again, for the demo, I'm using specific version, but usually you add the latest version on the practical project. Yeah. Okay, it's installing. And those plugins will allow us to generate new libraries, projects, and run Webpack or Vite or different like build environments and linting. So okay, it added quite a lot of dependencies. Let's also initiate those projects, because you can see that now I only edit those projects into package.json, yes, dev dependencies. And if I init those projects or those plugins, they will also add few necessary dependencies. For example, React plugin will add React into the package.json, and it will initiate some like necessity around TypeScript and other things. It also installs Cypress for end-to-end tests, which are automatically generated. Okay. So you can see there is some configuration in NX.json. It added React, React DOM, and few other things. So there's some Babel configuration, chest configuration, and TS config. Okay. And now we can also look into what are other plugins. So if I run this command, you can see that we have installed those plugins. Some of them contains, for example, only generators. Some of them contains like executor and generator. Executor is the thing that builds, lints, or I don't know, formats a text, and generator is for generating new libraries. There are also some directly available plugins from NX, and there are many community plugins that you can find here. So let's commit it. So let's generate an Express.js application. So I run this command with the help. You can see that this nxg, G is for generate. Then there is a Express plugin, and this specify that I want to generate application. With help, it shows like what settings I can provide. For example, I can choose if I want to jest or non-testing. I can choose between different linters. I want to switch from TypeScript to JavaScript and things like that. So let's generate a backend application. And nxg application, then the name of the application, and you can try this command with dry run flag. So if I dry run this command, it will not really generate any files, but it will show me just which files will be created or updated. So this is every time I generate like new library, I first run it with dry run to check that something is that everything is correct. Yes. So I can, if I remove this dry run, it will run, but I can show you also integration into VS Code or WebStorm. So I have here the NX command, NX extension, and I can run generate from VS Code. The advantage here is that I can see everything that I can generate. So, for example, web application, React, remote, or hook, or something like that. And if I search for Express, it allows only application. And NX plugin into VS Code has this like nice UI where I can easily select which option I want to run. So I just have to provide the name of the application. This is a required command. And you can see that it is running also dry run for me. So I can see the output. And if I click here, run, it will execute same command, but from editor. And I have like nicer UI to work with. So this is one really cool thing about NX. So you can see that it created like two folders, Quacker Backend and Quacker Backend E2E. This is for end-to-end tests for this application. We will not use it today, but you can delete it if you don't need it. But we will keep it here maybe for some future development. So it created very simple Express.js application. There is also some basic Webpack compilation setup. It has support for TypeScript, and it is a very nice default setup for running Express applications. So, okay. Okay, so let's add everything. Yes. And git add apps. Okay. Yes, and I will not commit it yet because there is second part of this step 3, and it is about generating front-end application. So there are quite more flags for the Quacker front-end application. It is a React plugin application. We choose a Webpack bundler. We can use Vite or ESBuild. There is out-of-the-box support for it. For styles, we will use plain CSS, but out-of-the-box, it supports emotion, style components, and other. We don't want to generate React router for us because we already have it. We want to use Pascal case for the file names. So if I copy this command, you can see that it creates some unit tests, some main HTML, fav icon, and tsconfig and webpack config. So it's ready. This is correct. I will just run it. Okay. It also modifies package.json at some necessary dependencies. Okay. And now we will be able to run those two skeleton applications using those two commands. So nx serve will run serve command for specific application. We have two applications, backend and frontend. Serve is for dev server. So it will run debug server with live reloading for us. So if I run, maybe is everything installed? Yes. So I will run backend in one window and frontend in another terminal. Yeah. So you can see that the backend is on port 333. 33? Oh. Quit. Okay. So this is dummy backend that was generated on port 4200. It created dummy frontend for us. So it seems that it is working. This is frontend, backend. If I kill it, this is not working, and this is not working. Cool. Okay. So let's commit it. Yeah, some changes here. Package.json. Yeah, it uses SWC compiler by default. It edits few ESLint plugins for React. Yeah. So, step 4 is about moving the backend code from this backend folder that is still living here and moving this SRC folder and all dependencies into the application that was pre-generated by NX. So let's start with it. First, we need to migrate our dependencies, like those. And I prepared this command, which is using this JQ utility that will go to backend package.json and list those dependencies. So I have it already prepared as a command. And if I run it, I can add dependencies for backend into root package.json. Remember, we are using integrated version of NX. And this means that there is one package.json that is shared across all the applications. It is possible to create specific library or specific application with specific dependencies, but it is much easier to deal with like one dependency version per project. It will work at least for our purposes today. And this is also what we use on those applications that we migrated to NX. So there are quite a lot of commands that will just move the code base. Basically, it is git move command that will take the code from SRC backend and move it to apps Quaker backend SRC. So this is the gist of it. This is what is happening. We just have to rename main.js into or index.ts into main.ts and remove the old folder. So I will take all those commands. Yeah, what it is doing is basically moving this SRC folder here, but there are some little tweaks about different files that we have to do. Okay. yeah, you can see it basically renamed different things. And if I git add backend and yarnlog and JSON, you can see that mostly those files just moved. The backend is quite simple in this way. We have to also create our basic environment variables here in backend. Let's create .env here. Yeah, some secret settings for local development. We are using the mock version, which is not using this MySQL connection. And now, yes, this is the last one. If I run again yarn nx serve backend, it should run on port 4000, yes. And it should be the same GraphQL backend working, but now it is this backend application is fully integrated into NX and fully migrated into NX tooling. So if I put here also username, it should appear. Yes, cool. Okay, step 4 done. And let's do the same thing for backend. Yeah, let's push it just to be sure. Okay. On front end, again, we have to start with moving front end dependencies or adding them into the main package JSON. And then it is very similar that we are basically removing pre-generated application by NX, and we are moving source code from the front-end folder into the generated NX tooling. So there are quite a lot of commands because front-end is a little bit more complicated, but basically it is just drag and drop of the SRC folder with some minor changes. So I will do it. Okay. Yes. Oh, does it work? Okay. Yes. So you can see that we basically moved a lot of files into different folder. All of those are moved. And we need to do a little bit of tweaking in the code. So first tweak is about environment variables. And for the Create React app, you can use this prefix to have access to environment variable on the front end. In NX tooling, it is standardized into NX prefix. So I have to search for this React app prefix. It is used here just for telling front end where the backend is, on which address. It is this 4000 port. And same thing is here. It is using process.env for the thing. So I just have to replace it with NX. Oh, I cannot type. Yes. So let's replace it. Yes. Now it is okay. And this is also okay. So it was quite easy. Second thing is that we are using absolute imports in the application. So let's look into app folder, and you can see that some imports are using this SRC prefix. So there is SRC UI, which is using scroll to top component from the molecules, no, from the atoms, like here. And we have to tell TypeScript where this src folder is. So to do it, we have to go to tsconfig base, and we just have to edit here. So this means that everything starting with src is actually in this folder. Okay, easy. Then we have to tweak index.html, which was pre-generated. We just have to change the title. So let's see, I will just clean it up. So we have this apps folder, which was generated. This file was also generated, but I don't like this title of the application. Let's just change it to Guacker. And we have to add a special class onto body, so it is correctly styled. Okay. Then, yeah, this is something specific for NX. And if I go to ESLint JSON, there are some rules already generated by NX. And one of these very interesting rule is enforce module boundaries. This allows you to say that this application cannot be imported, or this library cannot be imported by other library. For example, it is like private library inside some department, and this department don't want other departments to use it directly. So this plugin, ESLint plugin, can achieve this, but the problem is that we created this src prefix, so we have to kind of allow it so it will pass the ESLint test. It is out of scope of this presentation to talk about this plugin, but it is pretty cool, and it allows you not to create like monolith. This is one of these tools that you can use to prevent creating monolith even in the monorepo. Yeah. But we have to allow the prefix. So let's go final things about the styles. There is a little bit of change how the NX handles the styles. So we have to remove the import of those styles and move them into CSS file. So this is just a setup. Okay. Yes, and that should be it. So if I check again. Yes, 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 yes. Let's test it. Let's run backend and frontend together. You can see that in our repository, there is no longer this frontend or backend folders. Everything is moved into the apps. It is using not some custom webpack or some custom things for compiling backend or frontend. It is using really NX tooling. And if I go to Quacker on port, the port changed into 4200. You can see that everything works. A.com pass 1 to 3, 3 to 1. Yes. Okay. So it works. Let's see the graph. We can start the NX graph. And let's go to this URL. And now we are in this state. So we have a front-end application, which is kind of like monolithic or not well structured, or nicely structured in the code, but not split into smaller libraries, reusable libraries. And we have this backend application, and that's it for the migration, but it is fully migrated into NX tooling. So let's just commit it. Demo 5, step 5. Yeah. Okay. So we did it. The first part, like moving those two applications into the code. Usually my experience is that the applications are kind of like using old version of Webpack or some very strange Webpack configuration. And it is not that easy. But what Webpack allows you is like to have like future-proof tooling that is often updated. So it makes easier to, for example, migrate into modern tooling like Wheat or ESBuild, if you like. So it is like quite useful tool. So let's now start with second demo, and it is about breaking application into smaller parts. So before we start, there is some like very light or it is recommended hierarchy of different library types in the NX Monorepo. You don't have to follow it, but I think it makes sense. We use it on all those migrated NX Monorepos, and it splits libraries into 4 basic types. The most feature-rich is the feature library, which connects data layer and the UI, stateless UI together. Then you have UI libraries, which is like purely UI components without any logic. And then you have a data access, which is purely about data handling, data fetching, or sending requests to backend, but without any UI elements. And then you have a util libraries that is like for formatting, like common knowledge that can be used on backend and frontend or things like that. And there are some hierarchies how those can, which other types they can import. So for example, UI libraries can import only other UI libraries and util libraries. Data access can import only other data access libraries and any util library in the code. And for feature, this is just connecting UI and data access together, maybe with some light utility functions, and they can import anything. And you can use this ESLint plugin that I showed before to set rules that this is how the Monorepo is structured. So we will create 2 libraries now, and then we will switch to final because mostly it is kind of like mechanical, repeatable things, especially because the code base is kind of prepared for this. And you will see that later. So let's start with creating first library, and it is about navigation utils. So why do we need it? If we go on the front end, you can see that there is this routes objects. So it is routing functions that knows that about page is living on this URL or user page is living on this URL. And this part of the application is used in all code, in all other parts of the applications. So we have to kind of first move it to allow us to move other parts into separate libraries. So we first need this. Why start with this? This is like very good candidate because it's small code and it does not have any outside dependencies. So it is kind of like leaf library that it will be a leaf library, then don't import any other library. So let's start with it. Yeah, to generate new library, we will use the NX generator for React library. We will move it into specific folder, which is, okay. Maybe there don't have to be this libs, but yeah, I will check it. Is it there? No. So maybe we don't need this, but I will check it. The name of the library will be util. we don't want any styles. We want a jest runner, and we don't want to make it kind of like buildable library or bundle to have support for bundling this library. So let's try run. Yeah, okay, it works correctly, even if there is a ellipse. So it is small typo, but it's okay. I will run it for real. And what it did, it generated like new library here in navigation util. We have a project JSON, which is kind of specification for different configurations. For example, how to execute tests to run jest, how to execute linting on this project. And there is some jest configuration, and it also generated like default component because it's React library, and some basic unit tests. So we don't need this component. Let's delete it. And let's create like new file routes TS, and we will move the functionality there. So routes TS. I also like to create index TS there. And in routes, we will take this code from router application and move it there. So here you have those routes. I will re-export it here. And also in the root of this library. So you can see in the SRC, there is this index.ts file. And this index.ts file says what you can use from the library. Everything that you want to use outside of this library has to be exported in this index.ts. It is not allowed to go directly inside into the library. So this is one benefit of like NX tooling. It forces you to be explicit about what you export in the library. And it allows you to create kind of like private code that cannot be touched from outside of the library. This is usually pretty hard to achieve in like monolithic applications. So what we need, we need to import, I just have to restart TS server. Every time you generate a new library, you have to go and restart TS server in VS Code. And I want to import this route object from Quacker Navigation UI. So this is newly generated library. And if I save it, I can command click or control click here, and it will jump to the file that we created. Okay. So it's there. And we have to migrate all those imports off. We have to search for this string because a lot of parts of the applications are using the routes from the router, and we have to replace it with usage from the specific library that we created. So let's replace it. Yes, it works. And if I now run nxgraph, it's here. And you can see that we have a front-end application and we created new navigation util library. So it is very fast. With Monorepo, it is very fast to create like new library, to move code, refactor it. And if I check it, yes, just those, you just have to change those imports. And we have nice new library in our code base. Stepan. Okay, so we can do the same for design system. So let's again create a new library with inside folder shared design system. Let's call it UI. And this time I want to think about like creating, maybe in the future, we will create like Quacker specific UI design system that can be installed, open sourced and installed in any project. So I can adjust the import path of this newly generated project, because now the import path is this. This does not mean that it is not this. This does not mean that it is a navigation library and util folder. In NX, it kind of like goes a little bit against this notion. You can change the import path into this during the generation, but we don't use it often. So let's generate UI library. Okay, it's generated. I will just remove the pre-generated code, move the UI folder from the application into the library, and just change what is re-exported from the library. So let's do those changes. Okay. You can see that all those files just moved. Yeah, now I have to search for imports of src UI. Oh, sorry, no. Like this, copy, yes. So you can see that I'm importing heading link from src UI, and now it lives in separate application. So let's do it. Okay. So, okay, this is authentication UI. So there is no longer app UI, and all the UI is moved here into libs folder, design system UI, and you can see button is here. Yes, okay. So let's try running the application. NX serve frontend. Okay. I have to restart it, yes. And let's run backend also. 1200. Yes, everything seems okay. And then if I change something in the design system, for example, change color of button, let's move it this way. I can change the green button to be red and save it. Even though it is a library in the repository, you don't have to like run special watch command, because this integrated version of NX is using like on-disk linking of all the files, and the application is compiling the application and all the libraries with hot reload support. So this is quite hard to achieve with multi-repo support. You have to use this yarn link, which is not very reliable, and it allows you to iterate much faster, to iterate almost with the speed of like monorepo or monolith, but with advantages of splitting parts into like nice libraries. So, and we can go on with all other modules. We can separate authentication, context, feature, UI into separate libraries. Basically, it will be just, again, moving those parts. But we will not do it. We will just switch to the final branch. This is 32. Yes. Okay. Oh. Sorry. Let's amend it. Yes. Okay. So let's switch to final. I will just reinstall packages because maybe there are some differences. And in the final version, you can see that there are almost no pages and no code here in the application. This is common suggested practice for NX applications and or NX monorepos, that most of the code is not here in the application. Application is just small shell that initiates the application, but everything is living here in the libs folder, where you can kind of reuse it and nicely structure it into separate domains and nicely work with it. Yes. So what you can do with the final application, there are like multiple commands, multiple interesting commands. Let's see the final structure again. I will again turn off the navigation. And you can see that we focused only on front end. Backend is not split because it was quite smaller. And you can see that NX understands dependencies. It understands how you import from different libraries, and it can, from only those imports, it can say that, okay, the feature is using authentication UI. So I can even, if I import something in feature from authentication feature, the dependency will appear here. You can run many different commands. There are standard ways how to run tests, lints, and builds. So if I run this command, it will run all those commands together in parallel with some parallelization. And you can see that it is running linting for design system. It is testing for navigation utility, linting, and it also builds front-end application, it links end-to-end tests and other things. So this is useful to run commands for everything. You can even format whole code base. But what is more useful is to run those commands only if something changed. And for this, you can use affected command. So this affected command will run only tests or only lints on code that is affected by the change I have in the Git. So if I run it now, you have to also specify which branch is a common base for our comparison. So it will compare Git changes since specific branch. It is a main branch in our code base, so I have to override it into final branch because we are on final. So if I run this command, NX will analyze a Git, and it knows that there are no changes against final command, a final branch. So if I change something, for example, in navigation UI, or maybe Quack feature. Let's change something in Quack feature. I will just put console log here, 1, 2, 3. And if I run this command again, NX understands that I changed something in Quack feature, and it knows that all the dependencies affected by this change, because Quacker frontend also uses this. And yes, and the feature, yeah, I changed it in the feature. So it's also here, and it only runs commands that are necessary. And this is kind of must have for tooling for the big monorepos. I can even, and this is useful for CI/CD, I can even print affected applications and build or deploy only those affected by the change. So this is command that tells me that I change something in the code, in the Monorepo code base, and I have to deploy a Quacker frontend. If I put something in, let's put something in Quacker backend, src, yes. Let's put console up here also, and run now again. You can see that both backend and frontend has to be rerun. So that's it for the demo. We can talk a little bit about CI/CD. For CI/CD, there is a paid version of NX, which is NX Cloud. You don't have to use it. It is very good for very large code bases, or if you want to have like top performance. There is some pricing. You can deploy it on premises. It is quite expensive for small projects, but for small projects, it is not necessary. And what this NX Cloud allows you to do in the CI/CD pipeline is to have shared cache for the task. So if here Teika runs NX build on specific code base, it will upload the cache of this like output, the build artifacts, and the hashes of different files into NX Cloud. And every time anybody else in the team, like Kimiko, runs build on same project, on same code base, it will download the cache and they don't have to rerun the build. And same thing can be done in the CI pipeline. So this can save a lot of time because builds can take like 1 minute or 5 minutes in a very large code bases. There exists open source version of this remote cache. If you have like S3 like storage or Azure, how is it called? Azure Blob Storage, you can connect this cache. You can create this cache on top of Azure Blob Storage or S3 like storage, and you can use this for free. Only you have to pay for like your blob storage, which should be quite cheap. There is one more thing in the NX Cloud which is not available in the open source, and it is distributed task runner. You can run build agents in parallel, but the problem is like scheduling different things. NX helps you that it can break things into smaller parts, and you can specify those pipelines that only first 2 applications will run on this pipeline, the other 2 applications will run in parallel on other pipeline. You have to do it manually, but for distributed task execution, NX automatically can create a parallel agents for you, like 4 agents, and they can smartly schedule different tasks across this. So it can see that the first agent is kind of free, and it can reschedule different tasks across the agents, and you can save some time. Our opinion or our usage is that we don't use it yet. We don't need it. Our builds are quite fast, and the benefits of like NX cache and other things are like good enough for us. Yes, but it is very useful thing. And for the CI setup, NX provides like default things. This usually don't require anything paid. There is a standard template, for example, how to deploy to Azure pipelines. Maybe I will increase the font size a little bit. So you have a standard pipeline for Azure. And you can see that it is using those affected commands to run in parallel linked tests and build. It supports this base, which is like it automatically detects last successful commit that run in the pipeline, and it compares what was changed since last successful pipeline run. So it is pretty advanced. You have a way how to run it with NX Cloud, which allows this distributed task execution. And for distributed task execution, you just run 3 agents in parallel. You start the agent, and then all those commands will be automatically scheduled into those 3 agents. So this is how it is set up. It is quite similar setup, but overall the same, basically. And that's it for the presentation. So, are there any questions?
Your colleagues? Um, I think you might have had some questions to Thomas. Uh, so if you do have some, please feel free to type them in the chat here or unmute yourself and ask your questions with a voice. In the meantime, we would really appreciate you sharing your feedback. In the meantime, you can see the QR code right now. So any thoughts and any comments regarding the today's event, be it gratitude or a constructive feedback on what can be done differently, we would really appreciate this and really encourage you to share your thoughts. And in the meantime, do you have any questions? Please let us know, and Thomas is here to answer them.
Yes, I have small questions regarding this. Thomas, tell me please, based on your experience with Monorepo approach, what branching strategy you can suggest, and what do you think is better for CI/CD tool? Right now, you show that NX has own CI/CD tool for this, but maybe you can suggest a different for Monorepo approach.
Yeah, so I will start from the end. So this is not really separate CI/CD pipeline. You can see it here that it runs those agents in Azure pipeline. So it will run in your standard pipeline. You can have like Azure, like GitLab or Jenkins, whatever you have. It will just start those agents. Those agents will connect to NX Cloud, and NX Cloud will orchestrate which task those agents run. But those pipelines run on your server. So it can be any Azure or CI/CD pipeline that you use. You just have to configure it that those agents will run in parallel, connect to NX Cloud, and NX Cloud will schedule which tasks will run on them. So this is so it supports any cloud. And again, distributed task execution is like cherry on top. You don't have to use it. We don't use it personally. So it is like very advanced thing. For branching model, yes, in Monorepo, we usually use it with like one application that, or few applications that are kind of like synchronized, and we did not have a problem like releasing one application and having breaking changes. So our branching model is quite simple. We use basically Git branching or GitHub branching model with short-lived feature branches and the main branch as a source of truth. So we have a develop or master or main, and there are short-lived branches with pull requests. This works for smaller code bases with not a lot of changes. For bigger code bases with continuous deployment, I would suggest to integrate also feature toggling, like something like open feature that allows you to hide different functionality behind feature flags. So you can merge even unfinished work into the master and hide it behind feature flag. And once it is ready to be released, you can just turn it on using your feature flagging tool. And this would be, in my opinion, the best way for like continuous delivery. Yeah. So did I answer your questions?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas. We have a question also coming from Nikita. Do we need to pre-install NS plugins as NX React, or VS Code Generator will install automatically?
Yes, I think yes. You have to install the yes, so you have to install the extension here in the extension store. It will be suggested for you if you open the code, because there is this suggested extensions. It is this one. Initially, NX was started as a tooling on top of Angular tooling. So some things are named like Angular console, but it's really just keeping the same application ID for NX console. It is not purely for Angular, it is for all code bases. So you have to install the extension in your editor in the standard way. And if you want to see those plugins here with the generator, you have to install it in your package.json manually. Usually you see something, for example, in documentation, plugin registry. If I see, for example, let's go to something interesting, maybe Expo for React Native applications. And you can start with the Expo out of the box, like generate new workspace, or you can just add Expo plugin, maybe initiate it with the what is it? Yarn nxg init, like this. It will install necessary dependencies, and then you are ready to use the plugin. But usually there is some documentation like for NX Rust. Let's search. There is this Cargo plugin, and they will tell you what you have to do. They don't tell it here, which is kind of funny. Okay. Yeah, you just have to usually install the plugin as a npm dependency. That's it. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. Ihre is asking the question. Thanks a lot for presentation. Could we configure independent deployments for submodules, UI, authorization, etc.? Does it require complex versioning?
Does it require complex version? Okay. Yes. So, yeah, NX tooling is really flexible. So you can, for example, there are multiple ways how to do monorepo tooling in JavaScript ecosystem. And one of it is, for example, Yarn or NPM workspaces. So it allows you to create like cross dependencies with multiple package.json. So this library can be kind of like buildable. You can have package.json specific for UI. Here we have only project.json, but I can create a buildable library that can be released into npm, and then I can decide that I want to use specific, instead of using what I have here, I can use the library from npm. There are disadvantages in this, and the main disadvantage, in my opinion, is technical debt, because anyway, in the future, you will have to upgrade everything to the latest version of authentication UI, and you are just like creating like more complexity. For example, Quacker feature or Quacker UI will use like one version of design system, authentication will use older version of design system, and navigation will use the new version with the breaking changes. And this creates a lot of like technical debt, a lot of friction, because you will realize that you want to use latest navigation, but it is using the latest UI. So you have to change to new version of UI also for Quacker. And in my opinion, it is better to fix everything immediately. So this integrated approach that I chose at the beginning is that it basically don't allow you to do versioning. There are ways how to do it, but usually it should not be used a lot. It is better to fix everything immediately. I know that sometimes you have like deadlines, but I think the project should not exist in this, like we are always in hurry and we never have time to deal with technical debt. I think it is not scalable. I think it is better to have like cleaner code base when you can do things. And one thing about versioning, in my opinion, it is better if you need some like versions that part of the application is using something new, or you want to create like new version of login or logout, I would suggest to go with feature toggling. So to have like two versions in one code base, and based on feature toggle, you can switch from one to another. This allows you to have like on staging, to have like new versions, it can be tested. And when they decide, when management or business decides that they want to roll out this new version of login, you can just turn it on in the feature toggle. It is a different set of trade-offs, but in my opinion, it is like much better. Yeah.
Thank you, Thomas. Colleagues, do you have any other questions maybe? Seems like no. So just to finalize and to follow up, whatever we would like to share with you colleagues is just to remind you that I will share with you the recording of today's meeting. We're going to share with you the slides shown by Thomas, where he has all the links that were demonstrated today. So you will have them at hand, and you will be able to recall everything that was mentioned with the recording and all the links that are there. We would definitely ask you to share your feedback once again, and also to remind you that if you would like to join our team and to be the next presenter at the Speaker's Corner, I would really encourage you to check out the opportunities that we have in the company by scanning the QR code, which leads to our career page. We suggest you to follow us on social media, because we do announce the events like this on our social media, and you can see the posts about the topics, about the information, what we're going to be having there. And we wish you a lovely rest of the day and the week. Alexander is thanking you, Thomas, for the presentation. Thank you guys for joining us. Thank you for sharing this time together. Thomas, thank you very much for the information and for very helpful and insightful presentation. This is super helpful and definitely applicable. Francisco, I do agree with you. It was a very good presentation. Thank you, colleagues. Have a good afternoon and good night. Thank you all for being with us, and stay in touch and join our events for more.